Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Supply Chain Now Radio. We are broadcasting live today from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Scott Luton. I'm your host for today's session. In our webinar today, we're going to be focusing on one of the hottest areas in supply chain innovation, artificial intelligence. Our speakers, Sree Rajagopalan and Jerry Kopecky with Murano Corporation will share critical insight on how AI will be making its impact on industry in months ahead, especially in the manufacturing space. But more about Sree and Jerry in just a moment. As always, we're glad to have you with us here today on Supply Chain Now Radio. Okay, so let's tackle our ground rules. All attendees will be on mute as we're looking to optimize the audio experience. Now, with that said, let's make it as interactive as possible. So please do submit your questions via the chat toolbar. We'll answer as many as we have time for at the conclusion of today's webinar. Finally, a PDF of today's presentation and the recording will be sent out in the next few days to each of our registrants. So let's take a minute to recognize our sponsors here on Supply Chain Now Radio. Big thanks to our sponsors, APICS Atlanta and APICS Savannah. For those of you new to APICS, it is a premier industry association dedicated to end-to-end supply chain management. Around the world, our organization serves over 45,000 members. APICS offers membership and professional development, a wide range of education opportunities, industry-leading research and publications, and widely recognized professional certifications. To learn more, visit us at apicsatlanta.org or apicssavannah.org. One quick note as it relates to APICS Savannah, the chapter, which is about a year and a half old, has grown over 150% in the last year, led by the chapter president, Jeff Leroy. We've got a wide variety of upcoming programs, including tours of Gulfstream, Honda, supply chain certification training at Savannah Technical College, and much, much more. To get a better feel for programs or to connect with the Savannah chapter, again, go to apicssavannah.org. And a big special thanks to our sponsor, TalentStream, a WeBank certified recruiting and staffing firm that specializes in helping organizations find top talent in the engineering, the manufacturing, and the supply chain space. Did you know TalentStream has averaged a 45-day time to fill on its core job searches in 2018? Contact them today to put that V8 search engine to work for your organization. To learn more, visit us at talentstreamstaffing.com. All right, so our audience is in for a treat today. Let's share a little more information about our speakers. Sree Rajagopalan is the founder and CEO of Murano Corporation. And what I love about Sree, he has no shame in admitting he is a geek who loves all things supply chain. Sree, that doesn't make you a geek anymore. It makes you a really cool guy. So with 20 plus years of experience in the industry and as a former IBM professional, Sree's mission is to reduce supply chain inefficiencies in the B2B space by utilizing artificial intelligence and increasing data visibility. So how does he do this? Well, he does this through an innovative, affordable, and customer-friendly cloud technology that dynamically transforms organizations. So with a team of industrial engineers and software developers, a whole army of those very sharp individuals, Sree has created a supply chain management solution that connects data and improves processes in an organization and across the entire supply chain. His colleague, Jerry Kopecky, is a business IT architect who recognizes the importance of tools to assist people in working in their business's supply chain with expert knowledge in multi-platform operating environments, computing architectures, and implementation of network computing structures. He worked for IBM as well for many years in their ERP and architecture businesses, connecting applications to get usable information out of customers' data. For example, SAP data structures. Jerry has prior experience in building, developing, and delivering both packaged and homegrown solutions, plus designing effective, stable IT solutions to mitigate business problems or interconnected business processes. So with all that said, please join me in welcoming Sree and Jerry.
Thank you, Scott. In 2014, U.S. manufacturers had $1.7 trillion of unsold inventory. So that's 1.7 trillion. That's 12 zeros. And that's a lot of inventory. And I'm sure in 2018, it's gone up even higher. And 50% of a manufacturer's total assets is tied up in unsold inventory, accounts receivable, and accounts payable. And that's a significant amount of drag on companies' profitability. The more inventory you have, lower your profitability, and obviously you want to optimize that inventory. And as the ex-CEO of Caterpillar said, a company that manages supply chain best is going to beat out its competition every time. So that's critical. So if you can manage your supply chain best, it's key to the success of your organization and your career as well. And our goal, well, Jerry and our goal is to help companies attack this excess inventory problem using AI. And to be precise, it's more than just excess inventory, but we also want at the same time ensure that you don't run out of inventory. And we call this a bimodal inventory distribution, as you can see on the slide. So our goal is to make sure that you don't have too much of the wrong stuff and too little of the right stuff, but you want to be in the middle. As Jerry likes to call it, the camel two hump problem. We want to help you be in the middle. And like I said, it's called a bimodal inventory distribution. We want to help you get away from that. And as a success story, one of our customers, which is a tier 1 supplier in South Carolina to Honda, they were able to cut down $1 million of inventory in 4 weeks using AI. And that is significant quick turnaround and cost reduction. But the keys that I want to add here is the keys, as you will hear throughout the presentation today, is integration, both within your four walls and outside, and then adding predictive capability and predictive intelligence to this integration. And that's how we get to supply chain AI. Jerry, would you like to add anything to what I just said?
No, and I'm somewhat simplistic, and that's why I want to get rid of the humps. If you're a good material forecaster, material planner, lots of names for people's roles in supply chain, but you want to get rid of the humps. You want to be in the middle. You want to have just enough to get you by. You don't want too much. You don't want too little. And that's what, the promise that technology is finally able to provide to everybody. They made the promise, technology's made the promise for the last 15, 20 plus years, and they're finally being able to deliver on it.
So on the next slide, if you take a look at this, so before we get into supply chain AI and what it is all about and all that, this is something that I want to ask you. So as an individual, do you spend more time collecting data and putting into spreadsheets and making it look pretty? Or as an organization, are you in level 3, 4, or 5? So where are you as an organization, as an individual as well? So think about it, and our goal is to help organizations evolve from level 1, level 2, up to level 5. And for supply chain AI to be effective in your organization, you have to get to level 4, level 5, and that is critical. That's a prerequisite to adopting supply chain AI. And if your culture, organizational culture also matters. So if your organizational culture is more streamlined, more in the level 4, level 5, but it's and less of data collection, if that's what your focus is, adopting AI is going to be a little bit of a challenge. But if you get to level 4 or level 5, AI is the next logical step, and you can get to AI very easily. And then you can take both your personal, professional performance and organizational performance to the next level.
And again, if I can step in here, what you're trying to do is to get to these higher levels through your data and starting to analyze your data and make very, very conscious business decisions of what your data is going to be telling you. So you want to be able to look at your data and then make intelligent business decisions based on what your data is telling you. You don't want to be just gathering the data. You want to start analyzing and putting into place the process and the procedures that allow you to go into the higher levels of 4 and 5 here that you see.
So if you take the 80-20 rule, you spend 80% of the time analyzing data, improving the processes, and measuring the results versus the 80% that you spend collecting the data and making that spreadsheet look pretty. So we want to get that flipped over, get you to be more productive, and that's our goal. So let's talk about supply chain AI, what supply chain AI is. The fundamental shift in my mind is that here you're going to look forward. There's going to be more predictive component, and fundamentally you're moving away from incorrect forecasts purely based on historical sales. And then the other part that I talked about earlier is the integration part, where you're integrating within the four walls of your enterprise, plus integrating with your supply chain partners, right? So there's integrated data, and like I said, the analytics is going to be both historical, but they're also predictive. And then, like I said, your company is not an island, but it's part of an extended supply chain. And then finally, the key part is letting computers do what they do best and letting humans do what we do best. Humans are good at the emotional side of things, dealing with ambiguous situations, but where computers are really good at crunching through lots of numbers, seeing patterns, doing machine learning, right? And that's what computers are good at, and collecting data. So let computers do what they do best and let humans do what we do best. So that's the key part here is letting computers do more of that heavy lifting and letting humans do what we really do best.
The other thing that I would add to this chart that makes you start to move into the AI area is not only is it going to allow you much stronger based on your data for the predictability of what you're seeing, but it's also doing what computers do best these days based on your data, and that's monitoring how well that you may or may not be doing, and it also allows you how to measure that out. And so again, it's not only predicting, but it's monitoring and measuring. Also very, very important concepts to be added to this phrase of nouns here that we call supply chain AI.
A couple of myths out there. I've heard this from various companies. When we talk to them, there's a fear that AI is going to replace humans, but that's farther from the truth. That's not what we're looking for. AI is about human enhancement. It's not about human replacement. Like I said, it's to help humans do what we do best, and then let the computers do more of the heavy lifting that we cannot do as well as the computers can do. So that's what this is. So it's a myth when we say it's the AI is to replace human beings, but it's the grunt work, the heavy lifting, the data crunching, letting the computers do that versus humans doing that.
And it's also not, again, what AI cannot be, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a robot that's going to replace people. That's what we're trying to say here. It doesn't mean a robot. It doesn't mean some type of automation. It's making much smarter, again, decisions about what you're doing with your data.
That's right. All right. So if you take a moment to absorb this slide, so there are 5 key elements of this intelligent augmentation that we talked about. So intelligent augmentation, the very first thing is super fast data processing. So we all agree that computers can process vast amounts of data much faster, much better, much more efficiently than humans can. And that's what we want to do. So there's going to be a lot of data that's going to be processed. And this is going to be data, like I said, from within your 4 walls, including sensor-based data from your machines using Internet of Things, and then also outside your 4 walls from your supply chain partners, right? That's the fundamental thing, is lots of data, including big data, maybe weather data, maybe shipping data, traffic data, all that coming in and being crunched and processed, and the computing power is going to be used to see patterns and generate alerts. And then the second part where that leads to is eliminating human bias. Humans, we have a tendency to have some kind of inherent bias that can be eliminated with computers and with AI. And sometimes I've seen this repeatedly. We carry a lot of tribal knowledge in our head, but we want to get to a point where we can encapsulate that tribal knowledge, put that into computers so that even a more junior resource can take that information, not to replace you, but they can take that information and be able to make intelligent decisions from that tribal knowledge. So encapsulate it, feed it to a computer, and at the same time make better decisions. That's the second part, eliminating human bias. And then the third part, go ahead, Jerry.
I'm sorry. And I think what you're seeing, and you as folks interested in supply chain, you know that your data, the amount of data that you're collecting is increasing. It's growing. It's growing exponentially. Well, how do you handle that? Well, do you hire more people to be able to look at that data? I don't think so. I don't see, lots of people being hired, a huge number of increases. You think about your own company, you're not going to be going out there and hiring more people to deal with your structured data and your unstructured data. By unstructured data, I mean like pictures of data, pictures of lots of different things. How are you going to improve on quality? You're going to do that with unstructured data. Well, guess what? Your amount of data is increasing. So how are you going to deal with that? How are you going to handle that? And what you're seeing here, it was with this augmentation of, okay, let's go through that in a more intelligent way, and let's use technology as a tool to help us get into these simplified user interactions all the way up to fast, effective decision making. And that's what we're showing here of what AI is telling and promising folks, augmentation is providing folks. And that's what we're seeing here due to the fact of just the amount of data is growing exponentially.
So the third point, that the simplified user interaction that Jerry mentioned that. So our goal, and this is what we tell our customers, if you know your domain, if you know how to, the principles of supply chain planning and supply chain management, then the software capabilities should be fairly intuitive, and you should be able to pick it up with very minimal training, right? That's our goal. And that's what we're talking about, the simplified user interactions. If you have to think to use a software, then it kind of defies the purpose. And that's what we want to get to, is where we should be able to use Google Maps on your smartphone with very minimal training. If you know how to do your job, then you should be able to use your software with very minimal training. And that's what we're talking about, simplified user interaction. And Jerry talked about the predicting part and the monitoring and the measuring, and then ultimately the making decisions faster. So we want to get you away from taking hours or days to make a decision that can be done fairly quickly with the power of AI.
Right. And you see that in your own business, because business is moving very fast these days. You don't have that luxury of days and weeks to make a decision. You have, I'll bring it down to minutes and hours. And if you're lucky, you have days, but most likely it's, the time measure is decreasing, not to days, it's going back into hours and minutes and seconds, and that's what you're facing today. Business changes very fast, and you have to have your, your tools that are also able to do that. And again, computers are very good at making, and analyzing fast data, growing amounts of data. And the price points are right.
Right. So for companies that have spent millions and billions on ERP software, your question is, so we have ERP, we spend millions on the ERP software, where does AI, supply chain AI, fit into all this? And how does it coexist, if it is possible to coexist with ERP software? So those are the questions you're going to ask. So what we see from the industry is the often used term, the paradigm shift. So just like we went from landlines to smartphones, to us, the spreadsheets and the ERP are the landlines, or even typewriters. So if you want to consider it like that, that's how we see it. So it's older technology. So think about it this way. Can we use mapping software on a landline to get us from point A to point B? Can you do video calls? Can you be mobile with your landline? So these are things you cannot do with a landline. Similarly, with ERP software, you just cannot do various things that in supply chain AI platform provides. Okay, so smartphones can do what landlines can do, but then and some more. That's the key thing. It's a landline plus plus plus. So you can do a lot more. Similarly, supply chain AI can do what ERP is doing, but then it can do a whole lot more other things as well. Okay. For example, it can predict things, right?
Right. And one of the other things that Sree and I talk about all the time is one of our, how should I say, ulterior motives is what we're trying to do is to kill off, and I use the word kill off, spreadsheets. We don't like spreadsheets because, you know, lots of different reasons, but the least of which is, okay, your finance people are good indicators of using spreadsheets. They can make a spreadsheet get up and dance because they know spreadsheets. They know how to use the macros. They know how to, again, get that spreadsheet to dance, and they can make it do anything. However, they're not very good at conveying business changes or business or something happens. A truck hits my FI person, and gee, I have a new FI person, and oh, he doesn't understand these ERP macros or the spreadsheet macros very well. What's going to happen? There's no documentation. So what happens then is most of the time your spreadsheet gets rewritten. The macros get rewritten. And so you lose a lot of time there. You lose a lot of resource there, going back and reinventing the wheel, so to speak. So what we're trying to do here with this analogy of landline smartphones is to show folks that there's lots better ways to do things now. And what we're proposing was supply chain AI is doing that. And you know, AI can be looked at many different ways, not the least of which is if everybody everybody uses GPS these days. 20 years ago, if you saw somebody using GPS on their little phone, you would think that that's AI. Now, I don't think you would say that. I hope you don't say that. All you know is that, okay, a couple of satellites are up there triangulating something as fundamental as geometry principles to predict and forecast and monitor and measure where the heck I am, where I want to go, and then calculating how do I get there. And that's what we're proposing, that, you know, we're starting to see AI hit at this level, and that's what we're proposing here. Your software should be able to do the same.
So going back to the questions, if you spend millions on the ERP software, and just like we said, you know, initially with landlines, people got landlines and smartphones, right? They had smartphones along with landlines. You can do the same. So you can combine supply chain AI solutions with an ERP software. The investment you have made for people who are conservative, risk averse, you can go with an option where you can have a supply chain AI complementing ERP software, which we're doing that for many companies. But if you want to get to the next level, if you want to completely sunset ERP and replace it with supply chain AI and just live on smartphones only, that's also an option. So for people who think, okay, there may be issues with calling 911, then you want to have both ERP and supply chain AI. That's a hybrid scenario. We can do that. Or if you want to get away from landline completely, cut the cord, then you can go to smartphones only and then live with the supply chain AI, which can run your business and predict your future as well. So you can do both. So you have the options to do both. All right, Jerry, I'm going to move on to your favorite slide. So if you want to explain this briefly.
Yes. This is my favorite slide because, okay, we're talking about AI initially at a very low level because, you know, the big guys, and the big guys I'm talking about, whether it's IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, some of those other guys, they're proceeding with AI at a higher level than what we're proposing here. And when you start looking at AI, one of the things you start looking at is, okay, the psychology of learning, because AI, one of the principles is it has to learn its data. And so what you're seeing here is the good old Pavlovian / B.F. Skinner, everybody is aware, I'm hoping is aware of B.F. Skinner, stimulus response. And your stimulus is going to be your data. Your response is what do you want to do with that data? And then the reinforcement of what you're doing with your data and how you want it to perform is being carried out by your software. So this little slide here of these 3 little circles here are at its foremost the psychology of learning that AI uses to learn about your data. Again, you want to have something that you're doing to your data, and then your software acts on what you want it to do and then provides you with that, as I call it, the reinforcement, if you will. All right? Okay. Does that make sense to folks? Good. Moving on.
Moving on. So just like we have 4 levels for driverless cars, 4 or 5 levels, we have classified supply chain AI into 4 different levels. At level 0, which is where most of the companies are today, which means that absolutely no AI adoption. You're, as a supply chain manager, fundamentally your goal is to generate purchase orders for raw materials and production orders for finished parts that you make in-house, right? As a manufacturer or as a distributor. So that's your output that you're expected to deliver on a regular basis. And the inputs are customer demand, bill of material, and sometimes a forecast as well, and the bill of material and internal inventory. With this data, you have to decide what to produce or what to purchase, and you probably do this through a combination of MRP, spreadsheets, and as a result, it's very much human driven. So the accuracy is questionable because your master data may not be accurate. The customer demand, if you're in a made to stock scenario, you're relying on historical sales to generate forecasts. So the accuracy is also going to be questionable. Timeliness is low, and you use spreadsheets, like I said, and the collection, the analysis, the review, and action are all human beings. The humans are doing this, and there's no warning, no alerts. So this is where Jerry and I see most of the companies operating in. A very level 0, very human-oriented demand planning exercise that is very prevalent in organizations today. And go ahead, Jerry.
I'm sorry. What I just want, why we have low in both the accuracy and timeliness, why we say it's low in level 0 and medium and level 1 here, is think about your own data. If you only have 100, I'm just pulling off say you have 100, you're getting an order of 100 items, and you have a 1% error rate. Okay, that's not good. But say that goes from 100 and you have some growth, so it goes to 1,000. Gee, 1% changes the numbers significantly, doesn't it? 1% of 100 is a little bit different than 1% of 1,000. And so when your data is exponentially increasing and your accuracy is still low, your timeliness is low. And, well, go ahead, Sree. I'm sorry. Get into your level 1 here.
Yeah, so the level 1, the fundamental difference between level 0 and level 1 is the fact that we are getting more data from outside your 4 walls. So first is we're integrating the data that you have internally, but then we're also getting data from outside your 4 walls. And that's the fundamental difference. So that integration is going to provide extra visibility to your supply chain, and the visibility translates into better data, more accuracy, better planning, input for your planning process, and which means less uncertainty, which means lower safety stock levels. So that's the big difference between level 0 to level 1. And then from an accuracy perspective, it increases as well. But here, the other thing that you would see is that computers are going to be doing more of things, more and more of the data collection side. The data collection is going to be handled by the computer versus the level 0 where the humans are generating the spreadsheets and maintaining the spreadsheets. Now, in level 1, the human is still doing the analysis, human is still doing the review and the action, but that's the fundamental difference. The data collection is being handled by the computer. And then if I move on, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Again, just focusing on the accuracy and timeliness of level 0 compared to level 1. Okay, low, medium. Okay, in medium, level 1, I've got my accuracy, I'm down to 0.5%. Well, with the growth of data, gee, 0.5 of 100 is a little bit different than 0.5 of 1,000. I'm still having, and that's why we don't say accuracy and timeliness is what you need for today's business, because I don't want to be spending all my time running around chasing down my errors that I see, or as I put it, my unhappy procedures and processes. I want everything to be happy. I don't want to spend my time chasing unhappy things.
And in level 2, the big difference between level 2 and level 1 is that now the computers are starting to do more, and computers are collecting the data, computers are analyzing the data, and then leave it up to human beings to review the key points, the key points in the sense that any alerts, any shortages of inventory, excess inventory, for example, those, so the exception-based planning. So humans are spending less and less time going through vast amounts of data and spending more time on the exceptions rather than all the grunt work that the computers can do. So that's the big difference between level 1 and level 2. And then if you go on to level 3, which is where if you're depending on your comfort level, all these things can be handled by computers, and then ultimately the humans could be the review and then also automated ordering to your systems, your suppliers, partners, business partners, and all that can be handled at level 3 as well. Complete automation is where you could get to.
The analogy here I have is, we've all heard the phrase, it's easier to edit than to create. And here's what we're doing here. The analogy is, okay, your human is doing the easier job. He's being augmented by his tool, and he's reviewing what the computer is telling him. Okay? It's much easier to do the review than to do the actual number crunching, how should I say, the actual things or transactions that are being sent back and forth. It's much easier to review than to be the person who's creating it, or to be the process that's creating it. You want to let your computers do that, right?
So what we're seeing, Jerry and I are seeing, are like 4 use cases for supply chain professionals and that domain where AI will be very, very effective. And depending on time, we'll cover all of them or some of them. But a couple of things that are immediately that we can cover is the demand sensing and the supply planning. For supply planning for purchasing, ensuring that, like we started off with, not having too much inventory of the wrong stuff and too little of the right stuff, supply chain AI can do a very good job. So it can provide supply chain managers, demand planners, buyers, just the right amount of data to tell them that here are the top 10 materials that have too much inventory, and this is what's costing the organization. Too much inventory with no demand or very little demand, or it can also tell these planners and buyers, we have too little of this stuff that we may run out of stock, and which could potentially cause, in the case of automotive industry, a line down at the automotive OEM factory, like a Honda plant, which could cause a major financial damage to both the automotive manufacturer and its supplier. To avoid that, we can provide the alerts on a timely basis, and that's a good use case that we see in the supply chain AI field. The other one that I will talk about is the defect tracking. So most of you that deal with suppliers, you now talk about quality issues and defects that you get from suppliers. AI is a fantastic way to predict which suppliers are going to have defects, how many defects based on a whole bunch of data. And if we can integrate it to using IoT, Internet of Things, to actual machinery, we could also predict future supplier performance in terms of their quality, defects, etc., and potentially minimize supply chain disruptions. So one key thing that I want to kind of highlight in the supply chain disruption area is that supply chain disruptions happen because your customer or you do not have visibility to what's happening upstream from you in the supply chain, right? So that's the fundamental thing. So if you have visibility to what's happening within your supply chain and early visibility, then you can prevent or minimize some of the disruptions, or you have more time to plan for things, or you can minimize expedite costs. So that's one of the things. So visibility is the key there, and that integration with your supply chain partners is the key there. And the last thing I'll talk about is invoice matching. As many of you know, vendor invoices have lots of errors. There's always the case where there's always a case of, overbilling and undershipping and all that. And that's where AI can also be extremely, extremely powerful and valuable as well.
Right. And especially with something like the defect tracking, most companies these days have some type of, how should I say, interface between their quality systems who are tracking things like the quality of the items, or they're checking and their line folks tell them, oh, you just sent me something that I can't use, reject. And so you want to sell it, or they set it aside, and then you want to go back to the supplier who gave you that bad thing, and you want to do something with it, and you want to track it. So obviously what you're going to do is, most cases, you send it back to the supplier. How do you do that? Well, among other things, you take a picture of it, you do lots of different things. It doesn't meet the specs of what I want for my line, whether it's my car industry or my chemical production facility, you name it. It's not meeting the quality of the specs that I have specified. And so you want to be able to track that item and track what your supplier is doing with that item. If he's going to declare scrap, so be it. But if he's going to fix it, how is he going to fix it? What is he going to use? More importantly, when's it going to be sent back to you, that you have to basically go through the same process again? And that's what computers are very good at doing. That's what your AI is very good at doing. And that is looking at defect tracking and saying and telling you what's going on with it. You don't have to track through various file directories and look up pictures and look at pictures and examine what's the content of that picture. You're going to have the computer do that for you. And by the way, it does it a hell of a lot faster than what you, the human, can do.
So that takes us to like a concrete example. So I want to take you back to the first slide where you started with the bimodal inventory distribution. So as a planner, and if you can map that bimodal in the two humps of a camel to this, the top 10 materials and the bottom 10 materials, if you as a planner have access to this information, the top 10 and the bottom 10, that tells you which materials are, where you have too much of the wrong stuff and too little of the right stuff. This is what will alert you. And this comes from a number of inputs, including your customer demand, and future demand, and your internal inventory data, your scrap data, your future consumption, all that is fed into this, and then it is able to predict when you're going to run out of parts, how soon you're going to have it, and what's the value of the inventory that you have in excess of what you really need, right? And how many days in excess of what you really need. So that's, if you map it to the bimodal inventory distribution, the two humps, top 10 corresponds and the bottom 10 corresponds to those two humps, and you want to be in the middle.
Yeah, I love this chart because, okay, you can see right away that if I've got 10,000 of an item, I got 10,000 days of supply with 3 items. Gee, I don't think I need to order that item. And conversely, I've only got a couple of days delivery on certain items that I need. Well, if you've been in the industry as long as I have, you have the experience. You don't need somebody to tell you this because you know this. But what if you go on vacation, or what if you go on something called retirement, and you have to bring in somebody new and doesn't know the suppliers, doesn't know your company, and they need to know things like this. And what technology is doing is providing a tool that allows and shows you what has to be done. Gee, I've only been working for the company for a couple of weeks now, or a couple of months, and I know right away that I'm not too worried about my top 3 materials there that have 10,000 days of supply. So I don't have to worry about that. Oh, but I've got some other things, 72, 43. I want to go down the chart and I want to, I know I have to look at those things, look at those suppliers. I have to make business decisions about my top 10 materials. And conversely, I have to do the same thing, more importantly, with the bottom 10. Oh, why do I only have 0? Why do I only have 6? Okay, is there some event that's happening? Something called, for instance, Hurricane Florence that's affecting my supply chain? Oh, I better do something. Oh, how do I know things like that? Because technology is providing you with tools that augment what you're doing. That's why I like this chart, because it's telling me both ways. So it's eliminating, as Sree said, the camel approach, the buy humps. It's trying to get you in the middle.
That's right. And if you go back to the intelligent augmentation chart, so the fast data processing is happening. So if you try to do the same thing using spreadsheets, A, it's going to take a massive spreadsheet, and B, the moment you prepare the spreadsheet, the data is going to be obsolete. This is going to be updated in real time. And so the fast data processing is handled by AI. The simplified user experience, it's fairly intuitive. As if you look at it, you can see clearly and understand it without extensive training. And it's able to predict, monitor, and measure, and then you can do your job much faster. And this was one of the key tools that our customer used in South Carolina to reduce the inventory. So this is proven. This is it's really effective. And behind the scenes, what's happening? This is what's happening behind the scenes. So if you're on the left side, you can't do what we just talked about, right? If you're on the left side, if you have no integration with your suppliers, your customers, and within your enterprise, which I see, Jerry and I see that very common. Many companies have multiple systems. They don't talk to each other. So if you're on the left side, then you're going to have a tough time getting to AI. But if in the right side, where you have all this integration and your internal data is integrated as well, then you are on the way to supply chain AI. Then you can predict. But without that, you can't get to, I'm going to go back here, you can't get to this. So this is the pretty face, but behind that, you want to be on the right side, that integration, what we call the integrated information platform. That's the key thing.
Right, and you can see it's a very trendy word and has been in the IT circles for a long time, the use and the word integration. And here's where the proof of the pudding is, because if you're integrating your customers, your internal data, and your suppliers' data into something that you then can produce something from, and you can make a business decision from that data, technology is finally able to provide me with, the buzzword integration. I have a thumbs up on that one.
Yes, and so the other thing that I wanted to kind of highlight is that we're going back to the ERP versus supply chain AI kind of slide. So your ERP systems fundamentally are not designed to accommodate your customer data and the supplier data. And both Jerry and I have implemented SAP in many places. And the SAP system at best can handle the data within your 4 walls, but it cannot handle the customer data and the supplier data. And that's where that smartphone, the shift needs to happen, be able to incorporate all that. And that's the fundamental difference here. And that's the big gap that you see.
Exactly. And Sree and I have had lots of experience with ERP packages. I won't mention any names, but one of them is a large German software company that we have to specialize in integrating information to get something useful out of all that time and effort I've spent trying to feed this system. And so I'm spending so much time trying to pull something back. I'm trying to put in so much information. I don't have time to do anything else. All I'm doing is feeding the machine. I don't like that.
Which takes us to integrated business planning. So you've heard, I'm sure as supply chain professionals, you've heard of IBP, and it combines S&OP. So this is IBP is another way to this is a name for this. I mean, it's the same thing. We're incorporating IBP in this. And a couple of key salients, we are sharing forecast, shipment schedule, purchase orders, all that electronically with the upstream supply chain partners. And then it's more of a demand-driven planning strategy versus the way companies do MRP and all that. And the key metric is days of supply, but it's not absolute quantities. And that's the thing. Absolute quantities is meaningless. It's the days of supply, which measures how many days of supplies of inventory do you have, and versus the demand that you get from your downstream supply chain partners, right? So that's the key difference here.
And Sree, you can be the straight man here. What does your key metric, also known as a KPI, what does KPI mean? And then I'll give you the Jerry definition of what KPI means.
So
what does KPI?
Key performance indicator, Jerry.
Instead, my definition of a KPI, and I'm down in the trenches, known problem indicator. So I've changed what that meaning is to me based on how I see it being used, a known problem indicator.
Which takes us to what, like Jerry said, our pet peeve is to kill spreadsheets. And so the key messages here, if you plan without visibility to what's happening downstream, then you're planning blind, and which will eventually lead to high safety stock levels, which is the left side of the hump. We talked about the bimodal inventory distribution, or the right side as well. So you want to get away from this. You want to get away from spreadsheets. You want to get away to an integrated system and supply chain AI that can help you get to attacking the bimodal inventory distribution problem. Jerry, any thoughts on this before I move to the recap slide?
I could go off on lots of every one of these bullet items here, but I'm not, in the interest of time.
All right. Okay, so to recap, so this is the question we posed was, are manufacturers ready for supply chain AI? So the data, from a data perspective, you ask, where's my inventory within the four walls and outside the four walls? So when you're planning, the shift is you're planning, you're asking for inventory, you're looking for inventory within your four walls. But should you be considering inventory outside as well, within your suppliers, your customers, your distributors, depending on your business model? You have to plan from an extended supply chain perspective. That's the fundamental thing. And ideally, you need to have data, real-time data, for all these different business entities that are part of an extended supply chain at your fingertips.
Exactly.
That's the fundamental thing, yeah.
Exactly. And call us Mr. Obvious, but this is what we want to do. It's obvious what the answer to these questions should be, and that's why we call ourselves Mr. Well, at least I call myself Mr. Obvious. It's somewhat simplistic, but
yes,
it's very important.
That's right. That's right. Then we move on to simple reasoning, and then when will we run out of inventory, and how much of inventory doesn't have any future demand? I mean, I can guarantee that most folks cannot answer that question, these two simple questions, without extensive analysis. And we want to get our colleagues in the supply chain industry to answer these questions quickly, faster, and alert them, more importantly, when you're going to run out of inventory of a certain part, and when you have too much inventory of a certain part. So we want to help them get to that level. And then the decision making, who are my tried and tested suppliers, but who will be my best suppliers? Who will be my worst suppliers? Always futuristic looking. What's the point looking back if the history is not a good indicator of the future? So we want to have systems help you answer these questions, that forward-looking questions. That's the fundamental thing. And the judgment part, will we overpay our suppliers? As an example, will we be overpaying our suppliers? Right? These are the questions we want to help AI answer for you guys.
Right. And let me extend a little bit on the decision making, which a good AI tool is going to augment, okay, best suppliers. Well, let's change that around as who are my most profitable suppliers? Who am I, as a company, making more money off of various suppliers? Okay, they may be good at, getting stock and getting things in here, but am I making any money? Do I want to improve that money? And obviously, who's going to be, okay, who's not very profitable? Who do I have? Who's, what's a good word from the relationship, personal relationships? Who's high maintenance? How come I have to spend so much time with this supplier and he's not even very profitable? I'm not making too much money. Why do I have to spend so much time doing this? Well, okay, let's find out.
Very good. So that's to recap. So the final statement that I'll say is, like I said in the beginning, companies that manage supply chains better than their competition are going to beat the competition. So supply chains are critical. Amazon is a perfect example. They are able to do things that their competition cannot do. They're able to predict when I'm going to run out of Tide because they have all the data. Data is the key, and it's integrated, and they can do a lot more things, and they are far ahead of their competition. So to me, Amazon is not a bookseller. It's not selling televisions and other gadgets, but it is in the business of data. So but everything else is a commodity. Data and how you manage data and the integrated data, that's the key to success, and supply chain AI is critical. So at this point, I will turn it over to Scott for a Q&A.
And I only have one comment to make on that is, as Sree said, Amazon takes that data and then they do something with that data and they turn it into information that can be used. And boy, do they use it.
All right. Hey, thanks, Sree. Thanks, Jerry. What a great presentation. I like y'all's approach. I like the interactive approach here. And we've got some great questions teed up. So to our audience, I've got 12:51 Eastern time. We're going to take the next 5 or 6 minutes to post some questions to Sree and Jerry. And Sree, we've got a celebrity question poser. I'm going to coin that word here. So Bill Stankiewicz is the Georgia Manufacturing Alliance Southeast Director. He's on the APICS Savannah board. He's also on the Coastal WorkSource board member for the Savannah 10-county region. So again, a celebrity question poser here. So Bill states, Sree, machine learning and artificial intelligence have been the talk of the town for the past few years, but the hype isn't slowing down anytime soon. I believe 2019 is going to be the year for businesses who have waited to finally jump on board to witness a huge gold mine of advancements for their industry, like XPO, for example, has shown. What else could we potentially see next year?
So I'll take that, and then Jerry, you can jump in. So what I see happening next year from an adoption perspective, there's going to be increased adoption of supply chain AI, and then it'll extend to and Bill Stankiewicz mentioned this, machine learning. It'll also extend to Internet of Things, and I touched on this. So the integration will extend all the way to the machines on the factory floor. So the planners will have visibility to data all the way from the machines on the factory floor to their customers and suppliers. And that's going to become more and more common. The early adopters are going to jump on this IoT integration, and that's what we see happening from the adoption perspective. And by the way, Bill, I'm Sree here saying hello to you. We know Bill. Bill's a famous guy, yes. Jerry, would you like to add anything to what I said?
The common component to what you're going to be seeing is speed. And guess what? Speed is increasing. You have to respond quicker, better, faster than your competitor down the street, down the state, across the nation, across the world. So speed is increasing. So anything that helps you increase the speed of whatever you're doing is going to be, as I put it, trendy in the IT world. Technology, speed. Okay, there's lots of different things that promise speed, right? And let me just mention one one thing that I wasn't thinking about it before, but now I am putting in there as a very technology IT trendiness word or concept is 5G. 5G by your internet providers, whether it's Verizon, AT&T, Deutsche Telekom, Sprint, you name it.
Great
5G.
Point. Yeah, Jerry, great point. We actually had a member of the Sprint team on with us one of our last podcasts to describe their plan for they're currently implementing 5G, not only in Atlanta, but in other key markets in the U.S. So to your point, Jerry, that will allow us to move much faster. But I think one of the greater points I've gathered from the last hour hearing from you and Sree speak is you're going to be able to move faster, but also move smarter at the same time. So kind of get your cake and eat it too.
Yes.
So, and Bill, thanks for chiming in. Thanks for the question. I want to give Bill a big thanks too for supporting our supply chain 101 efforts. We were down at the Tybee Island Maritime Academy with Bill and a team of supply chain practitioners talking supply chain with fifth graders a week or two ago. So thanks for joining us, Bill. Next question comes from Ryan. Ryan states, I have heard that more comprehensive neural networks cannot be mined to see exactly how they came to an output from given inputs. And then he asks, is that an issue for trusting AI to take action?
Ooh, good question.
Good question.
If that's one we can, y'all feel free to take that offline with Ryan, or you can stand and deliver now, whatever your choice
Yeah,
is.
so we will. It might take a little bit of time, so maybe we can take that offline with Ryan. If Ryan can provide us contact, we can have a separate conversation with Ryan.
Perfect.
And the only comment I want to make in terms of answering that is neural networks, I love it, but guess where the data comes from? You have to have data to make some type of decision, right? And so currently, okay, everything starts with the data.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep. Ryan, great question, and we'll make sure that we provide your contact information so that you can compare notes with Sree and Jerry on your great question there. Great question. Okay, final question is going to come from Brianna. And Brianna asks, Jerry, you mentioned your own definition for KPI, known problem indicator. Can you give a quick example of how you've seen that definition illustrated?
Well, let's use the metric days of supply. Well, different companies have different definition of what that metric is. Some people say it's 10, some people say 30, some people say 60, 90, whatever it is, you want to decrease it. You want to be faster with that. And so that could be a problem, or it could be a differentiator, but most likely it's a problem. So days of supply that you don't pay your bills, and so there's a discrepancy between your AP and your AR people right away between, I put out bills and I pay bills in 8 days. Well, how about if I sat on things and my policy is 30? Why don't I, instead of 8, go to like 16 or 20? And so that's an example of, my KPI.
Great example.
You can look at it lots of different ways, and most indicators like that, metrics, I think I stand behind my definition of what a KPI is versus the standard academic definition of what a KPI means. Because companies are using that metric to do something, to make some type of decision. They want to either increase it or decrease it. And so it's a problem. Maybe problem is a bad word for it, but it's an issue, right?
Terrific. Brianna, great question. And that's going to wrap up our Q&A. But hey, before we move on to the final steps here, Sree and Jerry, Really appreciate what you and the Murano Corporation team is doing to allow this plant tour to happen at Honda of South Carolina and the North American Assemblies plant. That's going to be October 26th. Thanks for providing that link. So to our audience, great tour opportunity that is being facilitated by Jerry and Shree's organization, being sponsored by the APICS Charleston and the APICS Savannah chapters. Sree and Jerry, tell us, what are attendees going to see there on October 26th at those two plant tours?
Sure. So besides seeing great ATVs and side-by-sides being manufactured, cool gadgets, right, being manufactured at the Honda plant, you can also see the information flow between Honda and its supplier and the tight integration between these two entities, right? So where we're breaking down the four walls, just like we talked about, the integration, the information flow from the customer to the supplier and back and forth, and how that makes the overall supply chain more streamlined. So that's what you're going to see in the process, that information integration, the data integration, and then the supply chain integration, the visibility and all that kind of good stuff is what you're going to see. So it's a twofer. You'll see both the facilities in one tour and how the information flows back and forth.
Wow, what a great opportunity. So to our audience, you can learn more and register for that plant tour opportunity at apicssavannah.org/event. So thank you, Sree and Jerry. So on that note, we're going to be concluding our session this afternoon on a few final items. So first off, there we are. Terrific. So to our audience, again, we're wrapping up on a few final items here, just my luck. So first off, again, to make life easier, we've rolled out an auto text to subscribe feature. If you want to be auto enrolled for each of our webinars, rather than registering them for on a one-off basis, you can text your email to 42828 to supply chain, or text supply chain to 42828, and we'll take it from there. Hey, whatever we can do to make your life easier, especially if you use the webinars for your certification maintenance needs. Second, and we'll move on to the final slide here. Second, we want to invite all of our audience to join us for one of our upcoming webinars. We have several intriguing sessions on the docket focused on topics such as effectively engaging millennials. Who's struggling with that? Supply chain control towers, using big data in demand planning, and a lot more. Learn more at apicsatlanta.org. Thirdly, join us in Atlanta on October 19th and 20th for our APICS Regional Supply Chain Leadership Forum, which is being hosted by Georgia Tech. We're going to be pleased to be featuring site tours, networking, some incredible professional development opportunities. To learn more, send an email to info@apicsatlanta.org. We mentioned the plant tour opportunity, which Sree already addressed on October 26th. Again, you can check that out at apicssavannah.org/events, or feel free to shoot an email if you have any questions about that to either Sree, and you'll have his contact information at the conclusion of today's webinar, or reach out to Jeff Leroy at president@apicssavannah.org. If you're interested in pursuing supply chain management certification, be sure to check out our APICS Atlanta CSCP and our CLTD boot camps at Georgia Tech, scheduled for December 2018. And of course, if there's anything else we missed today, anything else that we can do to serve as a resource for you and your organization, please shoot me an email at evp@apicsatlanta.org. So Sree and Jerry, before we conclude today's session, any final thoughts on your end?
So thank you for giving us this wonderful opportunity, and I'd like to say AI is here. Companies are starting to leverage it and see terrific benefits. So it's ready to time to jump on the bandwagon, right?
Exactly.
All about moving faster and smarter, right, Sree?
That's right.
Terrific. So as we wrap up today, we'd like to give a big thanks to our guest speakers, Sree Rajagopalan and Jerry Kopecky with Murano Corporation, for that, I thought, this very helpful and insightful presentation. Big thanks to our sponsors again, APICS Atlanta, APICS Savannah, and TalentStream. Of course, a big thank you to our audience for participating. So on behalf of Supply Chain Now Radio, this is Scott Luton concluding today's episode. Hope you all have a wonderful week, and we hope to reconnect with you again real soon. Thanks, everyone.